Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm Phil Stasek, past president of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, and I'm welcoming you to another event. Our first Thursday events tonight actually is the second Thursday of October, but this is a very important night because we're going to be talking about climate change. Our event is called Global Warming, Truth and Consequences, Part 1. Now, we have so much information about climate change that we've decided to have two programs this month and then the month of November as well. We have fantastic speakers to talk to you about this important topic. It is something that affects everyone on the planet, not just humans, but frankly, every organism on the planet as well. Our climate is changing, and it is changing as it has always changed by itself. But there's also tremendous influence from one species, and that is us. So it's very, very important that we talk about this. We've covered climate change in previous programs, but we believe that it's important enough that this is something that we all need to talk about. We ask you, please pay attention, share this information with your friends, and in fact, one of the things that we're going to be talking about is the influence on young people. We have three wonderful speakers tonight. And in addition to that, a special VIP guest, a young person who is directly influenced, will be impacted long after everyone else on the panel is gone, I suspect. She is Addison Meyer, and she is a 10-year-old activist. She's going to be talking to us a little bit about what her perspective is. She's been very much involved in this subject for all of her young life. Kim Ross will be leading off the main part of the panel. She's the executive director of Rethink Energy Florida. She'll be followed by Dr. Lisa Soto, principal scientist, Applied Ecology Incorporated. And then Joyce Wasserman will be following up with, she was the co-founder of the Space Coast chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. And she's also been a member of CAST, Climate Action Organization. And you may actually know our panelists from other programs that we've done. You may know them from volunteer work that you've done. Several of our panelists are well known in our community, and we are just so lucky to have them here tonight. But I should mention that we had one panelist who wasn't able to make it. One of our panelists who was scheduled to be here, Hunter Miller. He's a field campaign manager for Oceania. And interestingly enough, at this very moment, he is suffering from flooding. He sent us a letter just moments ago apologizing for his inability to be here. And what he said is that all the rain that has happened last night and today, along with high tides, are bringing coastal flooding into his neighborhood and his house. He's struggling to get his furniture to high and dry. And he just is saying he's working with buckets and shop vacs, trying to save furniture. He apologizes profusely. And this is important because he says it is ironic that he's unable to give a presentation on climate change because we're experiencing a climate-driven event. Our climate is changing. It affects us personally, it affects us locally, it affects us nationally, and it affects us globally. So we lost a speaker tonight because, frankly, he's being flooded out. He offered that he looks forward to coming back, talking to us again at a future event. But tonight, our thoughts are with him. And Hunter, we do hope, if you're watching this, we do hope that you're able to get dry and safe. I should turn the floor over to our president, if I might, Karen Houston. Karen, if you can hear me, you have the floor.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. We appreciate your presence, all wonderful speakers. I'll take a moment, first of all, to address the tragic situation happening in the Middle East. You know, an ideal world would be one with peace and equality, but what we're seeing right now is an unimaginable suffering with war and violence and discord. We at SCPA, we do our best to try to understand what's going on so that we can hopefully try to help achieve that peace and equality. So what I'm saying now is that we're filled with sympathy for all those who are suffering. And we thank you for that. Hopefully something can be resolved soon. But for this beautiful program that we have here tonight, I would like to thank the people who are responsible for putting it together. Our producers for this program are Larry Abdul, Bonnie Ida, and the entire Action Projects Committee, which is a committee that puts all these programs on every month. So I thank you all for that. And we will be having, this is part one, we will be having Global Warming, Truth and Consequences Part 2 come November 2nd. So we hope that you all will be able to join us again for some wonderful speakers on this, just as Phil was speaking on climate change and how it's affecting us. So November 2nd, put it on your calendars. And in the meantime, check out our website. It's scpaflorida.com. And this Florida spelled out scpaflorida.com. And you can also see us on all these programs that we do every month. You can see it on YouTube, and our wonderful Nellie Cardinell we'll put that in the chat for you to see the YouTube channel. So hopefully you can go back and check and see some of the things that we've done in the past, as well as this program and those that are coming up. So I'm gonna turn it over to our treasurer. Is Carol here? Hopefully she's here. Carol Becker. I don't see Carol. Well, Carol's the one that tells us about our contributions and memberships. I know that you can go to our website and help me out, Phil, but I know you can go to our website and become a member. We definitely need members, and we also need your participation in whatever kind of way that you can, because we try to get out in the community, and we hope that you all can join us at some point. So just go to scpaflorida.com and you can become a member. You can also, I can't remember all of the amounts and everything. So Phil, could you fill me in?
Actually, I don't think I could have said it any better. The best thing for anyone who's interested in supporting the Space Coast Progressive Alliance to do is join us at www.scpaflorida.com.
Okay. So then action items. We ask each month for our wonderful guests, our guest speakers, to give us an action item so that once we leave here, we spread that out in the community. We don't want to just take this wonderful stuff that you give to us and this information that you give us and not do anything with it. So hopefully our guest speakers will give us some words of wisdom and some items for us to join us in this climate change of the world. We're trying to change the climate, get back into something that's going to be left for our children. Okay, Phil, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Karen, and we really appreciate your service as president. Thank you very much. This has been a good year. Thank you for leading us on. If this is also an opportunity for us to do community announcements. If there's anyone here on the program that would like to do a community announcement, anybody that's running for office, anybody that's got something from a local group, one of our allies, please raise your hand. There is a functionality here in Zoom. If you look for whether you're on a laptop or a pad or a phone, look for the reactions button. You click the reactions button and it's got a little hand you can raise. If you could raise your hand, we'll recognize you and give you a minute that you can make your pitch or make your announcement to our group. We greatly appreciate that. If anybody has a community announcement, please raise your hand, and this is your chance to spread the word. Not seeing anybody yet, so things are pretty quiet right now in our community. Everybody else is out bailing water out of their backyard as well. I suspect it's been raining. So, and if we don't have anybody that has a community announcement, let me remind you of something very quickly, and that is after our presentation, we will open the floor to the audience. And this would be our audience's opportunity to ask questions directly of our panelists. It's a terrific chance to speak to experts, people who have real experience in this field. And I would like to remind everybody that in our event next month, in other words, part 2, we're going to have a VIP guest, a young person from Montana who was successful in a lawsuit regarding the impact of climate change on young people. So that's going to be a real interesting announcement, or an interesting VIP guest. We'll also have Catherine Toms, who is an MD who is really active in a program called Clean Cars for Kids. She's going to be telling us about her her experience with the impact of climate change on young people, what she's doing to push back against that by providing rides for young people in electric cars so that they can get to the doctor. A pretty clever idea. Dr. Robert Scheller, PhD, Associate Dean for Research at North Carolina State University College of Natural Resources, and of course our old friend, local expert, Dr. Steve Lazarus. He is a professor of ocean engineering and marine sciences at Florida Tech to talk about climatology and some of the specifics. Again, these are fantastic panels. These are panels that you're not going to get to see other places. We have terrific people who can speak with authority, can answer your questions. And again, the last part of our program will be Q&A. One last call. Anybody that's got a community announcement, raise your hand electronically. We will recognize you and hopefully get your message out. It doesn't look like we have anybody tonight. Kind of unusual. Well, let's roll right into our program then. Bonnie Ida, she's got her hand up. She's muted. And Bonnie, I see you raising your hand physically. Go ahead and unmute yourself. And
actually, I wish there was a representative here, because just to remind people that the right to clean water amendment is still an issue. We need a lot more signatures. So you can go to righttocleanwater.org, I believe is the website, and download a petition or watch any event you go to. You will see people with the petition to sign. That's all.
And if you didn't know about that effort, and we've had a program on that specifically here at the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. The Right to Clean Water effort is an attempt to get onto our ballot for the next election in 2024, an amendment to the Florida state constitution that creates a right for each citizen of the state to have clean water. A rather clever and interesting effort, but we definitely need to have people to sign those petitions. The petition drive is ongoing across the state of Florida, and you can participate by signing. You can help other people sign too. I would like to also remind everybody that hopefully we have a nice rocket. We are on the Space Coast, so we need to remind people there should be a rocket launch tomorrow if the weather's good in the morning. That will be a Falcon Heavy, and that's something to watch. We're going to be sending a probe off to yet another asteroid. And don't forget that on Saturday there is an eclipse of the sun. If the weather is good enough for us to be able to see that, it's an unusual phenomena. Certainly encourage people to get protective stuff for their eyes to go watch that Saturday. Anyway, I guess we don't have the other community
Phil, excuse me, Barbara Bignair's she's got raised her hand.
I just wanted to make a special announcement about anybody who does go to our website and support us through joining in membership or renewing their membership. That membership will be good through all of 2024.
So you get a bonus couple of months here. It's a great deal. Wonderful time to renew your membership or sign up for a new membership, and it's valid for all of 2024. Excellent. Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you for your work as well, chairing our membership committee. We really appreciate that. Well, I think, again, it's time for us to start the program. And I would like to just take a moment to recognize our four speakers tonight. I'm going to once again announce who they are if you've just joined us. So our first speaker is a young person who has something to say, some very, very when we sit and we think about the impact of what humans are doing to the earth, the pollution that we're adding, who does it affect most? Is it those of us that are near the ends of our lives? No, it is young people. It is our children and our children's children who are really going to be impacted the most. And they will not be, they have every right to be angry with us and with our predecessors with what we have done. Dumping fossil fuels into our atmosphere, into the water, the garbage on the land. And it is our hope to be able to change things. Anyway, our first speaker tonight, a VIP speaker, 10-year-old activist Addison Meyer. Kim Ross will be next up. She's on our main panel, and she is the executive director of Rethink Energy Florida. Kim is an old friend. She has been working on our environment, on hopefully sustainable energy for many, many years. And we are so proud and lucky to have her with us again tonight. Dr. Lisa Soto is next. Lisa is an old friend. She's been a speaker at SCPA events previously, talking about our Indian River Lagoon and other important issues. She is now a principal scientist at Applied Ecology Incorporated. And it is wonderful to have her back. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, one of our speakers, Hunter Miller, field campaign manager from Oceana, was unable to make it because his house is flooded as a result of the incredible rain we've been having last couple of days, and tides, high tides, which are flooding his home. Horrible thing. And as a last minute speaker, we have our good friend who has stepped up to talk to us about climate change, and that is Joyce Wasserman. She is co-founder of Citizens Climate Lobby Space Coast Chapter. She's also been active in CAST, a climate action organization. She's been active for more than 15 years. And she's going to be talking to us about things that you can do, action items that you can take to improve the world. So it's great to have our speakers here. I'm going to open the mic to Addison Meyer, 10-year-old activist who has something to say, and we all need to listen. Addison, you have the floor.
Thank you, Phil. I just wanted to say, if you see me looking up, that's because I'm looking at my speech. Hi, my name is Addison, and I am 10 years old and in fifth grade. It is an honor and privilege to be speaking with you all this evening. It is crucial that we all come together to address the urgent issue of climate change. As a young person, I am deeply concerned about the future of our planet and the impact it will have on my generation and those who come after me. I am proud to have received the President's Gold Volunteer Service Award the last 2 years for my efforts in my community, picking up trash near our waterways and taking water samples with Fight for Zero has been a significant part of my community service. It is disheartening to witness the effects of climate change firsthand, especially living in Florida, where rising ocean temperatures pose a threat to our state. Increasing intensity of hurricanes is just one consequence of climate change that we are already experiencing. Insurance companies leaving Florida due to the climate crisis is a clear indication that we need to take immediate action. The fact that ocean temperatures in Miami reached 100 degrees this summer is alarming, and it serves as a wake-up call for all of us. A friend of mine was arrested a few weeks ago for peacefully advocating for climate action at the U.S. Capitol. It is unfortunate that instead of being listened to, young activists like us are being silenced. However, this will not deter us from fighting for our future. I implore you to join us in the fight. We need your support, your vote, and your active participation. Taking small steps, such as signing the Right to Clean Water petition, will make a significant difference. We must also prioritize the protection of our national parks, which should be clean and enjoyable for everyone. It is our responsibility to ensure that the future generations that can experience the beauty of these natural wonders. In the words of Dr. Seuss, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's just not. I care deeply about the future of our planet, and I hope you do too. Together, we can create a sustainable and thriving world for ourselves and future generations. Let's take action now, and for the sake of our planet and all its inhabitants. Thank you for listening. Let's make a difference together.
Thank you so much, Addison. Thank you so much for those words. And by the way, you know that if you were in our normal meeting event where we were live, this room would be standing up and shouting and giving you a great round of applause.
Yes.
Addison, you are amazing. In fact, I tell you what, is it possible for us to bring people off of mute for a second to give her a round of applause? I'm not sure if we can. Let's all do that. Let's give her a round of applause, everybody. Thank you so much, Addison. You know, you're an inspiration to us. Addison, you have spoken to our organization in the past on this and other subjects, and we are so proud of you. And we know that if we're going to change the world, it's not just for us, it's for you and for other kids yet unborn, because what we do affects other people, and that's the important lesson. So it sounded like you had an action item in there that you were asking people, please sign the clean water petition.
Yes.
Is that, do you have any other action items that you would like our viewers to follow?
No,
Well, thank you very much, Addison. Addison Meyer,
thank you.
10-year-old activist who I think is going to be president one day. I think she is an amazing person, and I congratulate you on all that you've done and what you hopefully will be accomplishing in the coming years. Thank you, Addison.
Thank
Well,
you. I wish I could stay, but I gotta go. So,
okay. Thank you for being here for us. We really appreciate it.
yep.
Addison was able
Thank
to join us. She actually was just at a high-level meeting, a roundtable of activists, and she was able to share a little bit of her time with us tonight. So we're very lucky to have had her with us. Our next speaker, Kim Ross, Executive Director, Rethink Energy Florida. Again, a longtime activist, a person who's been on the front lines of fighting for clean energy, trying to improve the quality of our lives here in Florida. Kim Ross, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here. Gosh, I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint, but as I do, I'll just say, you know, kids are really absolutely the reason why we do this. Rethink has a lot of kid-oriented programming, and I'll tell you, one young lady who's up here in Tallahassee, her name is Charlotte Stewart Tilley. She's just in college for the first time this year, but she's been active for the last 8 years, and she actually went through our energy camp. And she also, the other thing she expresses is that, hey, don't leave it all to us, right? Like, don't make it be only our problem. We need everybody on board on this. So I'm going to just start by telling you a little bit about Rethink Energy, and then I'll get into climate change, and then I'll end with some campaigns that we're doing that include some actions for you. Our organization, our mission is to educate, engage, and empower Floridians to take action to achieve a just transition for clean energy through youth education, adult engagement, and community organizing. And these are just some pictures of our youth education program. We do have an energy camp. It is exportable. It's here in Tallahassee, but we can export it if somebody wants to work with me to bring it into your area. We also have we participate in the Energy Whiz, and we host an Energy Whiz Expo up here. The statewide one is down where you all are, and the Florida Solar Energy Center, and then we also bring STEM-based education into schools. Our adult engagement, you know, in some ways, this is part of that adult engagement. Like, let's educate each other. Let's figure out how we're going to move forward. One of the big things that we do is called Reclaiming Florida's Future for All, where we bring people up to the state capitol from around the state, and I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. But we also encourage people to go talk to their legislators and their elected leaders at the local level and at the national level when you can, to make sure that they are educated as well. And then finally, we do a lot of community organizing. We work a lot right now at the local level. And in Tallahassee, we just in August passed the Clean Energy Plan. We had passed a resolution back in 2019, and then we worked with the city of Tallahassee to bring that into a plan that we worked with. But we do educate and engage around the state, especially regarding some of the federal money that is out there right now, and bringing it to local governments. Okay, and then finally, I can't mention Rethink Energy without talking about our internship program, because our interns really make the organization go around. They bring freshness to the organization. They run things in the organization. They develop curriculum, and we've had over 250 interns go through our program. As of June of last year, we've started having it be a paid, primarily paid internship program. So we're proud to have brought that. All right, I'm just going to level set. I feel like you guys probably already know all this, but I'm going to level set on what is climate change. So greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, other greenhouse gases exist in our atmosphere. They create our atmosphere. They keep the heat in our atmosphere. That's a good thing. We want that. If there weren't carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases that were keeping the heat in the atmosphere, we would not be here, right? However, the problem arises when we have rampant carbon dioxide, rampant methane that traps even more heat than what we need to have in the atmosphere. And that is what's warming the atmosphere, which is also what's warming the oceans and causing all sorts of cascading impacts that we'll talk about, some of which I'll talk about today. So the energy that's trapped by man-made global warming pollution is equivalent to exploding 600,000 first-generation atomic bombs per day, 365 days per year. And I will just mention that this and some of the other slides are courtesy of Climate Reality, which I'm a Climate Reality leader. And so I've kind of interspersed their slides with some of my slides, including this one. You know, I think you all know this too. The largest source of global warming pollution is the burning of fossil fuels. And just like we can see this kind of arching burning of fossil fuels and the amount that we've burned since the 1850s, we can also watch as the climate heats up. And this only gets into 2022, and I feel like we're going to see a real huge spike in 2023 based on what we've seen so far this year. So that, of course, leads to hurricanes. As Addison mentioned, the intensification of hurricanes and the rapid intensification of hurricanes. We've seen hurricanes this year that have intensified more rapidly than we've seen in previous years, and before this year we had I can't remember the one that went in 24 hours, goes from like level 1 to level 4 or level 5. Those are things that we're not seeing, just that rapid intensification. And if Hurricane Ian had gone slightly to the north, up and pushing all the water into the shallow bay of Tampa Bay, we probably would have seen more financial damage than we did. And of course, we also saw the amazing storm surge. And so, of course, the losses from Hurricane Ian remain very high, 150 direct and indirect deaths, over $112 billion in damage. You know, in 2022, we had $313 billion in damages. And so that makes Hurricane Ian account for more than 1/3 of the total. And then it's not just exterior, it's not just along the coastlines, right? We're in Florida here, we're very used to being inundated with hurricanes, or worried about being inundated with hurricanes. But inland, we also have major precipitation events, right? So this is a supercell storm that just is dumping water at a massive amount. I believe this one's in Texas. So we also see these massive precipitation events. There's been 27 1 in 1,000 year downpour events in the United States in the last 13 years, and 5 of them were in a 30-day span in 2022. And that's not looking too much into 2023. So I think we're going to keep seeing numbers rise. You mentioned the heat of this past summer, right? And how hot it was. And one thing a cynic husband of mine will say occasionally is, we're going to look back on 2023 and think about how cool it was, right? Like that could be one of our cooler years. So we have flooding. All this downpour events cause flooding, like we're hearing with Hunter. So sorry that he's not able to make it. And at the same time, it's in other parts of the world, it's also causing drought, right? And I thought that this was a very, very interesting graph, right? That shows you that it's the water cycle and the picking up of water and moving it into entirely different areas, right? So we see kind of a correlation to when there are wet extremes, we also see dry extremes at the same time. So it's a really interesting to think about how it's not just heat, right? It's not just hurricanes. It's also these this kind of moving of the water from one area to another. And then all of this is impacting our global systems in major ways, and it can and is leading to political and societal instability. So it impacts food supply, it impacts water, it impacts global health. In North Florida, when it occasionally at least used to get cold, I would say in the middle of winter when we're on a nice day, it's not just about a nice day, it's also about mosquitoes not going away in the winter. It's about continued pests that carry disease and more. So here's a really good example. Right now, you can see kind of the deserts in Africa as called uninhabitable, right? But by 27, this is what's predicted to be uninhabitable, right? And so if you think about that, like that means people are moving. We have more climate refugees. We have more people coming into the cities. All of that kind of can transfer into political and social instability as people start to have to move because of where they're living now. And I brought this slide in because this is Miami. This is Climate Central, a really good resource. In 2050, if we keep going business as usual, we're going to see 151 danger days. That's with a heat index of above 105. And this past summer, I several times said, when it doesn't get below 90, when it doesn't get below 85, and with a heat index of higher than that, our bodies don't have a chance to cool down. And Catherine Toms will probably tell you more about this next time, but that's really when it becomes a dangerous day. 151 out of 365 days, that's almost half of the year that they'll have danger days in 2050. And so there's also, of course, the Antarctic ice loss. What happens in Antarctic, what happens in Greenland impacts Florida directly, right? With the melting of our ice and our glaciers, that then equating to sea level rise. And here's, we're in king tide season right now. We've got flooding increasing both steadily and accelerating exponentially in various areas. And then, of course, all of that, especially for here in Florida, we've got 23% of our sales tax revenue generated by tourism. It employs more than 1 million Floridians. Like, we're talking about an economic concern as well. So, but the good news is we have the solutions. They're here. They're not far in the future. They are here. And of course, in Florida, one of our low-hanging fruit is solar. In 2002, they thought that the solar energy market would grow by 1 gigawatt per year by 2010. But in reality, it was exceeded by 17 times. And in 2022, it was actually exceeded by 252 times. So the solar market's here. The electrification of the grid is here. And this is just another way to say that, right? We are just seeing solar grow exponentially. And then the final thing I want to mention in terms of solutions is the Inflation Reduction Act. And I've actually heard folks say, I'm going to let Julie Turner in. I hope that was a good choice. And I've actually heard folks say, people don't know what the Inflation Reduction Act is. So this isn't officially my call to action, but I would say the more you can let people know that the Inflation Reduction Act is a huge, comprehensive climate change bill. it essentially is what we asked for in a lot of ways. It's not going to get us all the way there. It's not perfect. $369 billion to energy security, but it's likely to be larger. We're already seeing private investment. We're already seeing job creation as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act. And then we also have the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed the year previous to that. And that allocated $1.2 trillion to infrastructure, transportation, and public transit, and climate resilience. And so what you see is that we have all of this federal spending is just immense. And what's anticipated is, this is 2022 to 2027, right? That's a huge amount of spending. And I've been in the room with federal people that are working in the federal agencies, and they are trying to get this money out the door as quick as possible. And so it's there for folks to spend in all sorts of various ways. And I am available during Q&A if you want to ask questions about it. I know a decent amount about it. I wouldn't say I'm perfect at that, but the bipartisan infrastructure law, you can see public transit, water infrastructure, environmental remediation, electric buses, right? This is all $550 billion in new spending. And then finally, I wanted to mention the Justice 40 initiative. This is an initiative that President Biden signed toward the beginning of his time in office. And it requires that 40% of the agencies that report directly to him, that his signature would impact, get spent in vulnerable, marginalized communities that would normally not have seen the funding. And so we're talking about communities of color, we're talking about low to moderate income communities, and trying to address some of the injustices that we've had in the past. So getting on my soapbox a little bit on vulnerable, including the vulnerable in decision making. We as an advocacy community, environmental and beyond that, really need to make sure that we're bringing those who are most vulnerable into the communication when we're talking about solutions. There's something called the Hermes Principles for Democratic Organizing, and I highly recommend that you pull them up and take a look at them. But this is, about inclusion, bringing people, letting people have a voice in the conversation and not just a seat at the table, and being committed to our own self-transformation. And I'm going to give you an example of when that didn't happen. In Shorecrest in Miami in 2018, a hurricane came through, it flooded Shorecrest, a low-income community. Well, FEMA came in and they said, we're here to help. And they said, we've already arranged with all the hotels, with this list of hotels, for you to be able to go there, and they'll charge us directly. They said, all you need to do is put a credit card down or $200 cash. Well, the gentleman that I talked to from Shorecrest, his name is Eric, he said, guess what we don't have in my community? We don't have $200 just sitting around, and we often don't have credit. And so they weren't, a lot of them weren't able to take advantage of it. Those who were, though, also quickly learned that after a certain point, the hotel raised their rates, and they had to cover the increased amount with those hotel calls. And so what Eric said to me is, he said, we would rather have had survival packs. Give us a cell phone or cellular radio, a phone charger, some supplies, water and food, and lanterns. That's what we needed. And that's what he said about actually trying to make things. So this is a good example. If they had brought Eric or somebody else from his community to the table and said, this is what we have in mind, what do you think? He could have given them that information up front, but instead they kind of said, well, we got it. This is what you need, right? And so that's what we want to avoid doing. And so that leads me to 4 things that I want to talk about, 4 of our campaigns. This is the Solar Energy Equity Deployment Project. And this is a project that we're doing in Tallahassee in 3 communities. These are 3 low to moderate income communities, Greater Bond, Greater Frenchtown, Griffin Heights, to look at overcoming solar in low to moderate income communities as a partnership with National Renewable Energy Lab. And what we did was we hired, this is Lachanthia, we hired people from within those communities that were already leaders to help us start building that trust. We hired people from within the community to help us create the marketing material. We brought the people from within the community to the table with the city of Tallahassee to figure out, how do we overcome the financial barrier? And while we're wrapping up pieces of that project, we do have a community garden solar project that's continuing, where we're going to be installing solar in community gardens as a living classroom. And the city of Tallahassee is donating the solar panels and helping with installation costs. So that's super exciting. It's a great thing. I'll tell you, on November 8th or whatever day it was, 2022, I woke up and I said to my project manager, Terrell, I said, Terrell, this project is what gives me hope, because I don't need to deal with Governor DeSantis in order to do this. So the second project I want to talk about is changing the conversation on resiliency and sea level rise. This is the Upper Limit Project. We as a movement have been good at moving the dial on talking about resilience, talking about sea level rise. The government's spending money, the state government's spending money on sea level rise, but they're spending it on adaptation only. And so what we want to do is shift that communication and that conversation to also talk about, what do we need to do to keep an upper limit to sea level rise on for Florida, and how much is too much sea level rise? And so our goals are to move the state of Florida and to establish policies and programs that reduce climate pollution. And then we want Florida to advocate in a meaningful action at the national and international level, and then implementing renewable energy and electrification of transportation. We're working right now with the climate compacts to help them figure out how to employ this concept into what they're doing with the pollution reduction plans. Each of these entities got $1 million to put together a pollution reduction plan from that money we just talked about. And so far, several of you saw Rafe Pomerantz at the Southeast Florida Climate Compact. We've also got a Foreign Affairs article out there, and we're pretty excited about where we're going with this project. My final two things that I've got, this is money that DeSantis vetoed. DeSantis vetoed $350 billion, no, $350 million to that's coming from that Inflation Reduction Act. And he did a line item veto. Basically, his line item vetoed $5 million, but it equates to $350 million because of how it's connected. We have until August of 2024 to make that change. And so we partner with the Climate Action Now folks. They have an app, really cool app. And I'll put the stuff in the chat in a little bit, but you can basically take action to both, we're pushing Governor DeSantis to change his mind, but we're also pushing a couple of other areas to try and get movement on this, because we can see it passed in the next legislative session. So we think that this is probably going to be our #1 issue for the next few months as we move forward. And then finally, Reclaiming Florida's Future for All. Several of you have come to Tallahassee. We are implementing Reclaiming Florida's Future for All year round, which means we want you not just to come to Tallahassee on January 24th, but we want you, even if you can't come to Tallahassee, go to the Brevard County Legislative Delegation meeting from 3 to 6 p.m. on October 25th. Go to other legislative delegations meetings. Call your legislators and ask for some time. We do have talking points that we can provide for you. And I think I'm at time. So I will close out with this, my favorite, one of my favorite slogans: forget that this task of planet saving is not possible in the time required. Don't be put off by people who know what is not possible. Do what needs to be done, and then check to see if it was impossible only after you're done. All right. And I will...
Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much. You know, again, if you were in a room with our group, as we traditionally are, you'd be surrounded by love and surrounded by support. This is an amazing program, amazing presentation. Again, that was Kim Ross, Executive Director, Rethink Energy Florida. Kim, the website for folks to go to see and learn about Rethink Energy is?
It's rethinkenergyflorida.org, and I'll put that in the Climate Action Now website in the chat for you guys.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And again, to remind our audience, when our panel is complete, we'll open the floor to Q&A. So you will have the chance to ask Kim and our speakers' questions. So looking forward to that. Our next speaker, Dr. Lisa Soto. She's the principal scientist from Applied Ecology Incorporated, an old friend of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. Welcome, Dr. Soto. You have the floor.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see it. You guys see it okay? Great.
That
And you
looks
can hear me
great.
okay, Phil?
Yes, you're
Perfect.
great.
Thank you for joining us today for this very important topic. Kim, that was a fantastic presentation. You covered everything. So I'm going to fill in kind of in between the lines. So I really don't have much more to add because you did such a tremendous job. But I'm a water resources ecologist. So a lot of what I'm seeing and experiencing in science here in Florida is related to water resources. So I'm going to kind of focus more on that. But oh, how do I get the slides to change when it's like this? Uh-oh. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so I'm going to cover these 5 things. You know, of course, when you talk about climate change, everybody expects it to be warmer. So warmer temperatures, and what is that going to do? Precipitation changes, which Kim described pretty well already in that graph, the opposites of the super dry areas and the super wet areas. That's really stunning. Increasing storminess, which we all know and love here, sea level rise, and then ocean acidification. So warmer temperatures, yes, we're experiencing them already. There is going to be disproportionate impacts to people related to the heat advisories and who and how people are going to be impacted by warmer temperatures. Certainly is a public health issue. These series of charts kind of show you graphically how temperatures have changed since then in the previous century, where you're looking at 20-year averages and how they've kind of changed compared to the current averages. And you can see the disproportionate effects of this temperature change, where some areas of our country, and of course this is globally happening as well, some areas are actually getting cooler and some areas are getting warmer. So it's really, you know, kind of disproportionate and not the same everywhere. And there's along with those temperature changes are the species and the creatures that can thrive better in warmer temperatures are spreading. So these are disease carrying mosquitoes, one of the one that carries Zika actually, and how it's going to spread as temperatures warm throughout our country. There are going to be agricultural impacts that are going to be affected. And I didn't realize this until we started working on a resiliency plan for the center of the state, that dairy cows get very stressed out in hot temperatures. You wouldn't know it because Florida has been a very popular dairy state for a long time, but that when you get those high temperatures, they'll stop giving milk. They get stressed out. So we're looking at economic impacts, not only of diseases on plants, but also that certain of our bovine species don't like the temperatures either. We're seeing changes in species composition in Florida, and if you're a herpetologist, you love it. But if you're anybody else, you're like, holy cow, how many more lizards and snakes can we handle in the Everglades? I mean, this is a monitor lizard. It's called a tagu, and they're giant. You know, they're like those dragons of old. So we've got those now. Of course, everybody's seen the green iguanas. They're fabulous. So actually, I think we need to start opening like little green iguana stands and feeding people iguana tails. And maybe we'll get rid of them, but there's tons of iguanas and they're really cute. And we've got not only the pythons, now we've got the reticulated python in the Everglades, and we've got the green anaconda. And we've got, oh, you got to see this one, tagu. We've got these guys. We've got tagu and, oh, I'm sorry, capybaras. These are the capybaras. We've got capybaras now. Tropical species are surviving in Florida like never before. We've always been a state with a lot of exotic invasives. The plants are going crazy. This is one of those things where, you know, the insects don't die back, and then the vines don't die back either. If there's no winter and there's no freeze, the vines are taking over everything. This is an example of kudzu a little bit farther north of here, but the vines are just creeping north. Some of our native plants, the red mangroves, are creeping north. So we're seeing species compositions changing as tropical species are progressing north. it's interesting that the dynamic with the increasing air temperature, we're seeing, of course, the increasing water temperatures, which breed all kinds of interesting new creatures, and the perpetual algal blooms that we've been experiencing, not only in Florida, but really all over the world. It's a combination of a whole bunch of things, probably not the least of which is the changes in pH in our waterways. But that temperature and having the warm water is going to fuel and perpetuate those algal blooms even further, which changes the water chemistry. So when algae die, as water warms, it loses oxygen already. So then if you have less oxygen in the water column because it's warm, you experience more fish kills. Put algae blooms on top of that and you're going to have even more fish kills. So we've been seeing lots of fish kills in Florida as well. And then bleaching of our corals, and this map shows you the extensive loss of corals that we've experienced in Florida. I grew up in South Florida, diving these beautiful, beautiful reefs, and I just can't even bear to go down there and see it anymore. It's just too tragic. But this is a result of temperature change in the water. Kim talked about the extremes. So what's happening in Florida, we already are kind of a desert monsoon climate in our state, where we'll have severe droughts at certain times of the year, and then our rainy season, right? So those are becoming much more severe, not only in Florida, and we're seeing it. So these are, we're looking at rainfalls of 16 inches, 22 inches. These are 1,000-year rain events, and our stormwater infrastructure is designed for the 100-year storm. So when we get a 1,000-year storm, this is what happens. The stormwater infrastructure is overburdened and backs up, and guess where it all dumps into? The rising ocean. So as soon as the sea level hits the bottom of that stormwater pipe, there's nowhere for the stormwater to go. It just backs up, and we end up severely flooded. Probably like our friend is in his house right now. So these are examples from this past summer for Fort Lauderdale's deluge and stormwater system overrun and cars underwater. The other extreme is that we've got more wildfires occurring in our state. We haven't seen them in a couple of years now, knock on wood, not extreme ones, but just little brief ones. But here's some pictures I can share of some of the really tremendous wildfires we've experienced, where hundreds of thousands of acres have burned. And the increasing storminess, when they're lined up like this, I mean, who can question that we're definitely experiencing much more sudden and like Kim mentioned, really rapid strengthening of storms. So they'll start to pick up a little speed, and then like overnight you wake up and it's category 4. You're like, what happened? It used to take days. Now it seems like it takes hours. So increasing storminess on top of failing infrastructure and stormwater that can't go anywhere is going to be problematic, on top of just the energy of these systems and the damage that it does to our buildings and our existing hard structures in our homes and our cars and our boats, and it's just stunning. Something that people don't think about, unless you're in Brevard County, is that when we have major rain events, it also overwhelms not only the stormwater system, but the wastewater system. And it goes like this. The wastewater pipes that are underground, once groundwater gets up to them, because groundwater rises with sea level or groundwater rises with major rain events, then that water goes in the pipes because most of them leak. Also, the lids on top of the sanitary sewer system aren't sealed, so they leak. So when there's flood water, it all just drains into the wastewater system that's underground, goes back to the wastewater treatment plant, where it gets overrun with way too much water, and they're either going to flood everybody's house with wastewater, or they have to dump it in their most convenient receiving water body. And in our case in Brevard County, that's the Indian River Lagoon. So we've had, you can go to, actually, I don't sign up for anymore, but at DEP has a wastewater discharge website. You can sign up and get an alert every time there's a wastewater discharge. And when you sign up for it, it goes off like 6 times a day. You realize how bad of an issue this is. This is a huge issue. climate change is going to destroy our infrastructure, and we're gonna, it's going to be a mess. So this is a guy pumping. I think this was hysterical. He's like a septic pump out truck, right? He's just pumping the streets wastewater into a septic truck. So this is what we all came for, sea level rise, yay. This is the map of elevations of Florida. So I think the current predictions are that that sea level rise is going to rise somewhere between 3/4 of a foot and 2 feet by 2050. And Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, possibly up to 8 feet sea level rise by the end of the century. So, you look at the chart and you can kind of figure out, where are we? Well, over there, looks like the Cape's going to be gone, and most of South Florida, and, everything between Lake Okeechobee and Florida Bay will be back into the ocean again. So this sea level rise. So besides that, it looks like this, right? Everybody thinks, oh, sea level rise is going to come in and we'll just have to wade through it. Mandatory, slow, deep salt water. And that's some places that is what it looks like. But I kind of alluded to this earlier, that the real issue with sea level rise is groundwater rise, is that the whole surface of the water of the planet, and the sea and the groundwater that's underneath all of us, wherever you are, is going to get higher, which means it's going to get to where your septic tank is, and it's going to get to where your stormwater infrastructure is, and where anything underground, your utilities, your gas lines, it's going to start to get inundated as the groundwater rises with the sea level. On top of that, seawater, the ocean, the salty water is going to start to wedge underneath the groundwater, and then we get this situation where it's saltwater intrusion. This diagram shows it intruding and entering into a well. So that's going to be an issue for a lot of people if they're drinking out of a potable well in their yard, as saltwater intrusion and potable well fields start to become contaminated with salt water. It's also an issue with coastlines where trees cannot handle salt water. So we're already seeing this, especially up in the Panhandle area of our state, where pretty much it's a coastal retreat of living material. The trees are just dying, and as the saltwater is intruding into the coastal area. So the coastal retreat that we talk about is not usually the trees, it's usually the people. So here's a projection of, I think this is Palm Beach, for 2060, and the number of people are going to have to be removed because they're going to be completely underwater. So there's a human retreat as well as a tree retreat from the coast. There's that picture, Phil, that I told you about of the octopus in the Miami condominium complex. And this is an example, this is actually a king tide example of a stormwater infrastructure failure. The parking garage has a drain that would normally have drained to the ocean. Inappropriate, yes, but that was the way it was built back in the day. And instead of, during the king tide, instead of it draining, the king tide came up into the parking garage and carried this poor helpless creature who looks terrified up into the parking garage, and he made the headlines of the Miami.
This is extraordinary. That is an extraordinary.
So that's what we're gonna see, right? And then the last thing is ocean acidification. So so Kim talked about this a little bit, in that when you've got an extra greenhouse gases, both carbon dioxide and methane, they're going to change the pH of the water so that there are fewer H's available. So when things get more acidic, then you've got all these H ions that get caught up in other things, and then the carbonates that are used for making shells of shrimp and clams, and all the critters that have shells, and nautiluses, all the beautiful creatures that need to use carbonate for their bodies. They're not going to be able to, they won't be able to get as large, and they may not even be able to be formed at all. So acidification of the ocean, we've really only begun to see, and we're just beginning to get a sense of what that impact is going to be. Could not resist this woman's face. This is actually in Greece, and we just heard and got to see the horror of what just happened in Hawaii. I don't know what's worse, if it's gonna be death by water or death by fire. It just seems so So coming at us so fast. And what's encouraging, and I think that you heard this also in Kim's voice, is that so much is finally starting to happen. Finally starting to happen. You know, I've been at this for over 3 decades in our state, and for 2, I think, well, at least one of them, or maybe a few more than that, 1 decade, we couldn't even say the word climate change, right? So we've come a long way. We've actually come a long way. We've got a lot of money. We've got infrastructure money. We've got, you know, coastal resiliency plans. We've got, you know, things, you know, finally starting to happen. So super encouraging that we've got solar fields all over the place. You know, now I work for a company that actually does some of the assessment work to place those solar fields, and so we can get more solar out in the ground. It's a great time to be in our state. Finally. But I wonder, I leave this vision with you, you know, is this going to be Florida in 2100, and, you know, try to pick out your parcel of where you're going to buy now before it's too late. So we need our life preserver. And I feel like that's us. We're the ones, nobody's going to do it for us. So I thank you all for what you do every single day. I would strongly encourage you to pick your favorite climate group and get involved. I was going to give a big pitch for the Citizen Climate Lobby, but I think maybe Joyce will do that. But there's so many great groups to get involved with. You know, put your money where your mouth is, I'll say. And also, you know, think about the infrastructure issue. I don't know that people realize just how extreme that is. You know, these sunny day flooding events that are happening more and more frequently, those are directly a result of our stormwater system failing. Our stormwater infrastructure, our wastewater infrastructure is failing. If you're on a septic tank, you need to think about, you know, it's not going to be working for much longer. If you can get hooked up to sanitary sewer, do it. If you can get your lines checked, do it. You know, you're going to start thinking about, you know, your infrastructure of your home, infrastructure of your city, floodplain, etc. You know, I think, you know, we've got good momentum and good friends and good partners, and we can do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Dr. Soto, you have been respected. Your voice is welcome in so many venues. People around the state know who you are, and we thank you. We're so lucky to have you here tonight. That was
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
What a fantastic presentation, and I'm looking forward actually to seeing the Q&A, what kind of questions that you've triggered. And I think you gave us an action item, and that was identify and join an energy group or a sustainable energy group, an environmental group of some sort. Would you say that that's a good action item?
I think it's a great one. And then I encourage you to just get to know your storm drain. You've got one on your street, make sure it's clean, because you're going to need it to flow soon. If it's not right now, it's pouring here. So it's kind of a perfect moment.
Excellent. Excellent advice. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I'll stop sharing now.
Good.
My screen. Okay, perfect. Thank you again. Thanks for having me.
And that's Dr. Lisa Soto, Principal Scientist from Applied Ecology Incorporated, and she will be taking your questions here in just a few minutes. Our next speaker, as we said previously, Joyce Wasserman. She's a co-founder of Citizens Climate Lobby of the Space Coast, also a member of CAST, a climate action organization, and she's been involved with this topic for at least 15 years. Joyce, again, well known. Thank you again, Joyce, for stepping up because Hunter Miller's home was flooded and he had to back away to help take care of his home. A very strange and ironic thing to happen on this evening when he was supposed to be talking about the impacts of climate change. But Joyce, we are so glad to have you here tonight. I'm going to just step back, give you the floor. Joyce Wasserman, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Phil. But I really want to thank Kim and Lisa. I thought I knew about climate change, but you definitely added to my knowledge and my motivation, which is pretty high to begin with. And I talk about joining groups, Rethink Energy Brevard. And Kim, thank you for that. Say to go and talk to the legislatures of Florida. I believe the date was October 25th. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
So Kim does at the state level what I have tried to do and I'm doing on the national level. And my hat is off to her because she's moving mountains in Florida. And that's a really hard thing to do, but that's what we're obligated to do and to keep trying to do, no matter who our people in Washington, D.C. are. We got to push and constantly try to elevate the conversation and bring to their attention that climate change is big and they shouldn't talk around it, and just, we got to build the base, right? And we can build the base personally by writing and calling, and that's what I'm going to ask you to do in just a moment. And we could also build the base by getting influencers to join that conversation. And I think that's where Kim's work is perfect, because all the legislators in Florida, they're the influencers for Rubio, Posey, and Scott. So again, I can't thank both of those two women enough for doing what they do. So what am I going to ask you to do? I am not going to talk so much. I'm going to ask you not to sit and be too comfortable. I want to ask you to take an action. And I really know how easy it is to have somebody say, do this action. And then you go have, your TV show, your book, your kids, whatever, they're waiting for you. So we're going to take the action right now. And the action is to write at least one of our legislators tonight. And hopefully you're going to see that it's really not difficult to do. And it's really not difficult to do, particularly if you're a member of Citizens Climate Lobby, Jewish Earth Alliance, probably, and certainly Kim Ross's group. But these groups are two of them that I know that every month they give you an action item. Like Citizens Climate Lobby, you get on the thing, they'll send a message to your phone, call your senator and representative today and ask them to support this bill. And there are many climate bills that are out there, but how do we know what they are? So I need them to tell me what it is. So the bill I'm going to ask you to write about, and you don't worry, you're going to see it all up on a screen for a second, is called the Agricultural Resilience Act. Now, every 5 years, the US government has to pass a bill to help farmers. That is coming up this year. But what is the bill going to look like? Is it going to help big ag? Is it going to help little ag, our private farmers? It so happens in Florida, there's over 48,000 little farmers. So this bill is here to help them, but more importantly, to help them not contribute to global warming. The EPA says US agriculture contributes a minimum of 10% of the greenhouse gases each year. So 10%, I don't know, maybe it sounds significant to you, maybe it doesn't, but at this late stage of the game, we have to effect and make changes in every single solution that we can do. So why agriculture? Why approach the 10% and help them get to zero carbon emissions, or not just carbon, but methane and greenhouse gas emissions? Number one, cows produce methane. They burp, they fart, and they poop. And all of this produces methane. And that's big. So you can either be like my good friend and Space Coast Progressive leader, Barbara, and become vegan, or you can get farmers to learn how to reduce cow methane, or even, harvest it. And so one thing is livestock are a big producer of methane. The next thing is if you till your soil, it releases greenhouse gas that is stored in the earth up to the atmosphere. How can you plant your crops in a no-till manner? This is also a way to reduce greenhouse gases. A third thing about farming takes land. Land sometimes means cutting down trees. You cut down trees, one is the wood, you don't have, the basic thing is trees are nature's carbon sequesters. Trees suck bad stuff out of our atmosphere, and besides, they're pretty, and they give us shelter, and they cool, right? So deforestation is the third way that farms can improve, or not causing deforestation. And what could it do? They can be a source of carbon sequestration as they plant crops that absorb greenhouse gases. More resilient crops could be used. What are the natural crops that don't require so much fertilizer? Number 3, how can farms get by with less fertilizer? And you could also use that land, as Kim mentioned, for wind or solar energy. So there's many ways to make farms carbon neutral. So at this point, I'm going to share my screen. There it is. Okay. Phil, what do you see?
Actually, I've got a great view, and I'm looking at, you've got charts. You're asking me to tell you what I see, or you're just asking me?
I just wanted to know that my screen was also your screen.
Yes, we got a couple of charts and a couple of slider bars on the bottom.
One other thing that I didn't mention that I'm active with is a program called En-ROADS. En-ROADS is produced by MIT, and they have produced a computer system that takes in all aspects of the climate challenge and specifically looks at solutions. So for instance, if we only electrified transportation, we're going to reach the 2.5 goal, or 2.7, whatever it is, from the Paris agreements. So it has a lever for electrification, and it also has right here, this is where we're headed right now. So if everybody in the world electrified, how much do you think that would drop the temperature? Make a wild guess, Barbara Bigner.
I really don't know, Joyce.
Oh,
You
just
really
say
put me on the
0.3%.
spot.
Just say 0.3%. It's a really big thing. Let's say it's like it's gonna take it a whole degree down. So let's just do it.
Oh, sounds good. Thanks.
Right, and it really didn't make a change in the time we need to do it. So that's because if everybody electrified and they were charging their cars with coal, it wouldn't work. But let's move over to this slide over here, which says methane and other gases. And I'm going to go to the deeper information. And it says over here, decrease or increase greenhouse gas emissions from methane, nitrous oxide, and fluorocarbons. That's like air conditioning stuff. And methane is released from cows and agriculture and drilling, but we're not talking about that at the moment. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to use detailed settings. And what if we adopted the best practices for agriculture? And everybody in the world did it. And we have lowered the temperature 0.1 degree. And at this stage of the game, when we have to have many, many things to make the goals we want, that is significant. So, and just a plug, if you want me to show you more about this program at a later date, I can do it, but I am going to stop this share. And I'm going to go to a different share. And let's see if I got the right one. Oh, I hope this is the right one. Let's see. If not, who knows? I may be writing personal letters on here and you're going to see it. Okay. I'd like, so this is some background for what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm not going to read it all to you, but I'm going to ask you to encourage our legislators to preserve the Inflation Reduction Act's funding, $19.5 billion for climate smart agricultural programs. So that's earmarked for agriculture right now, but we know we have only a stopgap budget from right now. Our government's running until I think November 19th. So decisions will have to be made. Kim, did you have a question?
Can other people see anything? It just says Joyce Wasserman
Oh,
started screen
the
sharing.
screen is paused. I don't know why. Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
I'll try that again. What do you, I can see my computer's on low battery. Let me plug it in. What do you see now?
We're just looking at your view of you directly. We're not getting screen sharing. Dr. Cardinal, would you have any suggestions for us? Dr. Cardinal is our resident IT expert.
Let me, wait a second.
No suggestions. I mean,
Well, give me just a moment. I'm sure I can.
it's probably a temporary bandwidth problem.
Let me give it one more try. If not, I will just ad lib.
Bingo.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. So, tell your members of Congress to make climate a priority in the 2023 Farm Bill. And as I said before, now's the time to do it. And let's get right in. I want you now to open your internet and go to, you could just, write in posey.house.gov, even easier. Just write into your search engine, contact Representative Posey. Okay, I'm going to give you a moment to do that.
Joyce, could you do me a favor and scan back up for a second so that we can see the text that you had written up there? I'm going to actually take a photograph of that.
Oh, sure.
This is the old-fashioned way of doing it.
Give me just a moment.
So the old-fashioned way to do it is to write it.
No, well, you know, actually,
I
Boy,
guess I should say the old-fashioned way of doing it is to scrape it into or chisel it into a clay tablet, but I'm not quite that old-fashioned.
I'm not even on my screen now.
I do see that you have we're still seeing https:// poseyhouse or posey.house.gov.
Okay, I will scroll.
There we go.
Okay,
There we go.
so
That's what I'm looking at.
is that the part you want?
That's what I'm looking for. Thank you, ma'am. This is the easy way to
Okay,
collect it.
tell me
Thank
when
you.
I can move up. So hopefully everybody has gotten to that form now. And maybe you've even started filling out where it says name, address, phone number. And eventually it gets to the place where it says topic or why are you contacting me? Okay, Bill, are you doing it or is somebody else doing it so they can tell me that you're all on the same page?
Actually, I'm afraid to do it as a host, but hopefully somebody else who's not can let us know if this works.
I'm doing the Senate Rubio just because he isn't my guy, but
That's fine. But so whoever you want to write to. And now the question is, what do you write? So you start out with some sort of personal statement. And it could just say, I've given you 3 examples. They're right up there. I'm extremely concerned about climate change because I have grandchildren, because I'm already seeing the changes, because I think climate change is really going to hurt people, and already my insurance rates are going up. I'm concerned about sea level rise, right? I'm extremely concerned about sea level rise due to climate change. I'm concerned about climate change because I have grandchildren. I'm concerned about climate change because I know sooner or later, people are going to have to leave Florida. It will be unlivable. I'm concerned what it's doing to animals. I'm concerned what it'll do to future food production, whatever you want. Then you go on to the body of the letter. It could say something like, Congress needs to pass a farm bill this year. I want to make sure that money for the farm bill goes to climate initiatives. Could say, the changing climate is bringing new challenges to the people who grow our food. Florida has over 48,000 small farms. That is why I'm asking you to co-sponsor the Agriculture Resilience Act. But I want to bring your attention because somewhere in there or in the part that says, what is this about? You write, if you're writing to a senator, S1016. If you're writing to Posey, you write HR 1840.
And just for everyone's clarification, that is House Resolution 1840 and Senate Bill 1016. Is that right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
By the way, I think in the history of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, this is the first time we've ever had a speaker who was able to give us an action item that we could execute live online to write a letter. We've, it's funny.
You, Phil. And I hope that people see it's not hard to do. And every single letter is, if not read, tallied. Their staff is busy. When I write these letters, I'm not so concerned about convincing them. What I'm concerned that they know, I'm concerned about climate change. I want them to co-sponsor this piece of legislation. Even if you only wrote that, it would be enough. I think it's pretty rare that we're going to find that little kernel of something that's going to tell the aide who's reading this, oh, senators are really going to want to hear this one, right? But they do tally every contact with their office, and they do tally how many people are writing about the climate, how many people are calling about the climate. And
Joyce, are we
Yeah.
asking, can I clarify that in the letter? Are we asking him to please co-sponsor Farm Bill HR 1840
That's right. That's
Okay.
for if you're writing to our senators.
to Posey?
I'm sorry, in Posey, it's HR 1840, correct. If you're
Okay.
writing the senators, it's S 1016.
And I should point out to everybody that in our chat area, Dr. Cardinal has posted contact data for a couple of these issues. So if you haven't been looking at the chat, go take a quick look. Kim Ross has posted a number of things in there. Dr. Cardinal has posted. So take a quick look at the chat area. Bonnie Eden made a note about the solar co-op being operational on the Space Coast right now. If you're interested in doing solar panels, whatever. So take a look at the chat for more information on this. This is good.
And Phil, you just reminded me of something I should have done. I should have just posted those addresses in the chat where you could have copied and pasted, but it's really not so hard. Just go Rubio contact, Scott contact, it will pop up.
And something that we always encourage our members to do is to get the directory of your legislative contacts and data from the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters produces, and we usually distribute to our members, the yellow folder that every year changes because the data does change from year to year, their addresses and that sort of thing. Back to you.
Is it okay if I stop my share now?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would just like to see a show of hands. Who actually managed to send it out?
Almost.
Okay, well, you got some time, but I hope now you know how easy it is to do. And I will put something else in the chat.
There we go. We can see that in the chat. Your link to the forms. That's the quick way of contacting your House representative and your senator.
And now I'm putting another one in the chat. If you would like to, and I hope you will, receive a text message, once a month or so, or whenever a new piece of legislation drops out, that gives you like a super easy link to either call or write your folks in Washington. You just sign up with them and they'll do it for you.
Joyce, I think we may have actually gotten to the point where I think it's time to open the floor for questions. Are you done with what you'd like to do, or would you like to start taking questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Joyce. Again,
this.
thank you. This is a really cool bit of tech that we were just playing with here. The ability to kind of get people, if you're not in the habit of calling or writing or texting or emailing your representatives, it is a great habit to be in, and to set yourself a little goal of doing a letter per day, per week, per month, whatever, but just do something. Because once you get in the habit of doing it, it gets easier and easier. And actually, they get to know you. It's kind of fun when you get to know the staff by name and they get to know you as well. It's kind of fun. So I think it's about time for us to open the floor to anybody that has questions for our wonderful speakers. Kim Ross, Dr. Soto, Joyce will all answer your questions. So if, again, as we were saying earlier, look on your device, look for the reactions button, raise your hand so we can identify you, and then we'll ask you to ask your questions. We ask you to please limit it to a minute or so, and make it a question. And hopefully we can have a wonderful interchange. We always encourage our speakers to ask questions of each other too. It's really fun for the audience to be able to watch you guys talk to each other, add to each other's answers. So anybody, come on, somebody's got to, and you know what, while we're waiting for people to raise their hands, I'm going to ask a question of anybody on the panel, and that is the importance of reducing your meat consumption. You were talking about going vegan, and that is full in reducing your carbon footprint. Really does reduce your carbon footprint a lot. But if you want to just say reduce your meat consumption, do any or all of you guys like to answer that, or to discuss the importance of our diets? Something everybody can do, and you can do it right now.
Yeah, I've heard it said that the single thing, like when it comes to a personal use type of thing, the single thing that is most impactful is to reduce your meat consumption. And vegan is definitely a great option. I know not everybody's going to go vegan, and so even reducing it is a good option. I always say that there's always something that you can do personally, right? There's always a challenge for you. So some of you might be vegan already, and it might be a challenge for you to stop using bottled water. But some of you may not be vegan, maybe eating meat twice a day, so try and reduce that to once a day. Try and reduce it to, try and take a day entirely off of meat eating. But there's always that one challenge, whatever, and everybody has their own challenge, right? So it's better for us to challenge ourselves to whatever that is.
And Lisa or Joyce, do you want to answer that yourselves?
What was the question?
And that was, what do you think about the impact of reducing your meat consumption on reducing your carbon footprint?
It's absolutely true. Less meat consumption is a help. But I would take the approach of saying, this problem is so big, we have to do what we can personally, but we need to drive the public and our friends, and certainly the people in office, to make good policy decisions.
That, from what I've read, that actually is really the big picture, and that is every individual has their own impact. But when we can get our government, we can get our industry to change, really the mass of the ball really gets rolling. So anyway, I see we have other questions. Jan, you have your hand up, and Jan Moran, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
It's kind of a stupid question. I don't know how you're going to answer it, but my frustration comes with people who speak with such authority and say there is no global warming. It's a hoax. It's a lie. All these people are just making this up, and anybody that spends money and spends time, they're doing it for the wrong reasons. And my question to you is, what do you say back to these people? I don't know how to argue with them. And it's just, yes, please, what's your answer?
You don't argue with them. You stop them. You say, look, it's real, it's serious, and humans are the cause. I don't know where you're getting your information from, but I suspect that this is becoming because you're afraid of something. And then let them say what their concerns are. I could go on a lot more, but maybe some other people have comments.
I'm not sure if Kim or Lisa would like to answer that. You guys deal with people all the time. They're climate deniers. This is what we're talking about. When somebody comes to your face and says, it's all made up, what do you say?
I really liked Joyce's answer, because I like that she realize that the person who's coming at you with this false truth, right, is kind of fearing something, fearing change, fearing science, fearing, that there's something about that individual that you can just put it back on them and ask them, what is it you're afraid of, or what is it that you're concerned about, how can you not accept it when thousands of NASA scientists have? So, and also, and the other thing is, I've been involved, as you know, with a whole bunch of different types of environmental issues. And you need to, it's not worth spending your time and energy arguing with people that are just going to always say, no, I don't believe you. It's not worth those people. It's not worth it. Like, focus your efforts in changing the behaviors of the ones who are willing to listen. Don't spend all your time fighting with the people who are just like non-believers. There's no getting through whatever it is, their value structure, their whatever is, like Joyce said, what are you afraid of? There's something in them that is refusing to let them believe it. So you're probably not going to get there. That's probably something that's deep in their value system or their anarchy. So it's better to spend your time talking positively with those willing to listen than to waste your breath talking to people who are just never going to change their mind.
Yeah, I talk about a semicircle, right? And you got it's like a pie, right? There's the people that are here tonight, right? Extra concerned about climate change. That's probably why you came. And then there's a whole bunch of people in the middle that are just going on about their daily life. They don't doubt. They just don't think about it, right? And then there are the climate deniers, and they are loud, and they will get in your face sometimes. And I really do like that approach of what's your concern? Why are you why even have this argument with me? But it's the people in the middle that we really need to talk to, and to listen to too. It's always important to listen.
And I see Bonnie Ida has her hand up. Bonnie, what's your question?
I have lots of questions, but I could start with one that, because we just wrote that letter, and yet I find that the supermajority in Tallahassee does not care about our letters. I realize they count them up, but basically, isn't there another route to go? I mean, I saw one thing recently that the Public Service Commission has been chided for rubber stamping increases in your electric bill. So, okay, but what's coming out of that? It's not like they took back the rates that are going up. I'm glad they caught them red-handed, but what can we do to, just get right to it? Our power system is what's the worst cause of climate. How can we influence them, bypass this useless legislation? I know we have some wonderful people, but they're such a minority. What can we do?
Who would like to take that question?
Well, since you're talking about Tallahassee and the supermajority, and I'm up here in Tallahassee, and everyone sends them here, by the way. It's not us Tallahasseans that are the problem. But I hear you, and it can be very frustrating. I think about a couple of things. I do think that if we don't speak at all, then the other side's the only side that hears. When we did net metering, right, that bill, they were passing some anti-net metering bills that would have really major impact to, especially the lower income community members who can only afford solar because of that exchange with the utility company. In the end, it went to the governor's desk, and in the end, he vetoed it. There were 16,000 calls and letters into the governor's office, and there were 13 that supported the bad legislation. So it's, and it was just too much of a headache for him. Like, I mean, I don't feel like he's got great motivation, but it was too much of a headache for him. And in particular, our friends over in the northwest part of Florida, who also voted Matt Gaetz in, they were up in arms about FPL in particular. And so I'm sure that had something to do with it, but we won that battle. But we did it by everybody getting together. That said, it is painful to work with the legislature. And so I kind of balance, right? Like I balance my time and my energy, my emotional energy too, between what am I going to do with the state government, and then what am I going to do with this, with the local governments, right? With all this funding that's coming down, how am I going to make sure that the local governments know how to get that funding, know how to implement it? Sometimes the local governments, you know, even Tallahassee, which is a pretty good government, we need to keep our eye on them and not, you know, don't go chopping down all the trees and those sorts of things. So sometimes, a lot of times I'll go into the local realm just as a breather and be like, oh, oh yeah, I can impact change, right? So it is kind of a balance between the two.
Bonnie, I think you're doing a great thing because I know you're getting a lot of petitions signed for clean water. And, you know, that's another avenue. If we can't vote them in, can we legislate for them?
It really is that the clean water petition is definitely worth our effort. So that's something for everybody that's on this Zoom. Anybody that watches this once it's on YouTube, if you're not familiar with what we're looking at, please look it up. It's worth your time to get involved and so first of all, sign the petition. Second of all, get somebody else to sign it with you. I see we have another question. Larry Abdullah, he's got his hand up right now. Larry?
Yeah, I appreciate the presentations, especially the biological stuff and everything Kim Ross is doing. I've been looking at statistics while this is going on, and I've been looking at before, and I again see that the combination of power and industry is about 60 to 70% of the global emissions. Transportation in the 20-30% sector, and then farm the rest. So, and I love the Inflation Reduction Act, but I don't, and this is kind of at a national level, I don't think the clean power part of that really went very far. You guys can comment if you know, what hope do we have? And I see solar is rising, but is it rising fast enough? Alternatives. So what hope do you see for clean energy in power and in industry in the next 15 years? I do want to mention there is a much cleaner way to make cement that we can talk about. Does anyone have a comment on that?
All three of our speakers, I'm sure, can answer your questions. Who wants to start?
So the Inflation Reduction Act does not go far enough, right? Like it's well documented that it's not going to get us to where we need to be by the year 2035. And that includes the clean energy piece. That said, right now, with the funding being available, coming out on a weekly basis from the federal government, so my hope has always been in action, right? Like I lost hope around the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and I gained it by starting to take action. Boom, action, action, action. So so with all this funding coming out, it's more a concern to make sure that it gets spent wisely right now, because it's here now. Can we push it further? Do we need to push it further? Do we need to push local governments further? Yes, absolutely. But I also think I think that will come as they start spending this money, and as they start realizing that, you know, as it drives, for instance, as it continues to drive the prices down for solar, for clean energy, and as it continues, there's other things that need to be done, like a transmission line improvements and those sorts of things to get wind power to Florida. There's improvements on that stuff that has to be done as well. So there's a lot that needs to be done. And then, but I think right now my focus is on spend it, get it out there, get it to the right governments, get it to the right people that are going to do it, instead of turning it into a civic center, or, you know, stupid things, that bad decisions on expenditures, turning it into some of the some of the things around carbon capture and those sorts of things that are dubious. So I think right now that's my focus. Sorry, I'll be quiet now.
And Joyce and Dr. Soto, anything you'd like to reply with?
Larry, you touched on several important points. One thing is not enough. Inflation Reduction Act by itself is not enough. Having a totally green energy source is super important, but not enough. But there are changes being made. In the program that I flashed at the beginning of my talk, the En-ROADS systemic computer model, I've done it for about 1.5 years or 2 years, and at first we were on a path to reach 3.7 degrees Celsius in heat, and then that got modified to 3.6 degrees Celsius. So things were changing enough that we were not accelerating our pollution. Now they dropped it again because of changes already made and in the works. We're targeted to 3.3 degrees of temperature rise. So we just need to keep on cutting that down. And the worst thing we could do is lay down and die beforehand. You know, so like, don't stop now. We are making progress.
And by the way, Joyce, that En-ROADS interactive app that you were showing, I assume that's publicly available, or do you need a subscription to that?
You do not. It is free. It is publicly available. You can play with it anytime you want. I will put the link in the chat. But to get the most out of it, a guide is good. And there's also many YouTube videos of En-ROADS being done, and people explaining it. The beauty of En-ROADS is that it is interactive. You can't just sit back and it's not a lecture. You have to say, I think this is an important part of the solution, and then it gets discussed. But you have to, the audience initiates the discussion.
And Dr. Soto, would you like to address any of the questions that Larry had?
Yeah, well, thank you, Larry, for asking the tough questions. And I would offer, I'm not involved in really climate lobbying, but I have been involved in environmental causes and trying to make change for a long time. So I have a couple of thoughts. One is that you can sometimes reach your local representative or senator when it's not session. It's almost easier to get in outside of session and get their ear, and then try to convince them to either establish some type of a roundtable, which is what we did with Senator Mayfield, and that was a tremendous success. We got like the Clean Waterways Act, we got a lot of things passed by encouraging her to create a roundtable around the Indian River Lagoon and water resources. So that's my experience, and I'm like, so I don't know if you guys have done that, but that's a thought, is like, go see your representatives when they're not in session, because they tend to be more easy to talk to. They're almost like a regular human at that point, versus I always joke, even with Debbie, who's kind of a friend now, that when she's in session, she's a robot. Like, oh, you're in your session mode. Sorry, I could never, ever run for office. But so there's that thought. And then the other two are what somebody mentioned earlier, and it was probably you can give up your plastic bottles. So, and it's not just give up the plastic bottles. My thought is sustainability on the entire globe. We cannot keep offsetting and sending our pollution and our toxic gases to other countries. So right now, plastics recycling looks more like send it to Mexico, because they don't have environmental regulations, and then they remelt it, and all of that off gas ends up back in the atmosphere. So sustainability and this, whatever needs to happen, it can't just be, let's take our pollution and bring it somewhere else for somebody else to pollute. So that's a thought too. It's that disproportionate impact. Everybody needs to be at the same level of environmental equality in order for this to happen. It can't be that some countries are lagging behind and therefore the other countries are taking advantage of the fact that, oh, they don't have a climate pact, so we're going to let them pollute, right? So that's happening, and that happens. And the third thought I had, and this is my soapbox, do you know that making fertilizer for lawns takes 1% of the world's energy consumption? Because they have to fix it from the atmosphere. So the nitrogen that we're applying all over suburbia is actually fixed nitrogen from the atmosphere. And it takes a tremendous amount of heat and pressure to fix that much nitrogen to turn it into little pellets. So we've managed to create a ginormous global population by making fertilizer. This would have, we never would have gotten this many people on Earth if we hadn't figured out how to fix nitrogen to make bombs and then use it to make fertilizer. So stop fertilizing your lawn. Here's an action item, because that's taking up, like 1%, like Larry mentioned, industrial, the industry and the industrial emissions, 1% of our global energy consumption and emissions is coming just from the fixation of nitrogen to make fertilizer pellets. And most of that isn't even going to feed us now. It's going to feed our lawns in suburbia. So give up your fertilizer and help solve the climate crisis. So those are, my thoughts from a really a more of an ecologist perspective and somebody who's been more involved in lobbying for clean water than for climate change. But it's all, it's all one system, and there's certainly water and air are very key to each other as we're learning, right, as we proceed through this interesting time that we get to live through.
And Dr. Soto, I know I learned from you in a previous presentation that those of us that have reclaimed water, we thought, hey, we're doing a really good thing here by having reclaimed water. We're spraying what would have been wastewater, and we're using it to water our lawns, and it has a little fertilizer stuff in it. But I know that you had said that the amount of fertilizers, the amount of nitrogen and phosphates that are being spread on your lawn from your reclaimed water is just like fertilizing your lawn. So it's important for us all to reduce the amount of reclaimed water that we're applying to our lawns, as well as not fertilizing our lawns. Is that right?
Well, sometimes with reclaimed, they have to get rid of it. So they're going to give it to you regardless. But yeah, if you've got reclaimed irrigation, you do not have to fertilize. There's plenty of nitrogen and phosphorus in that water as it is. And it depends on the facility. But, most of the Brevard reclaimed facilities are putting out plenty of nutrients in the reclaimed water. So you can save money by not introducing additional fertilizer and save our environment, our waterways, and our climate.
Yay.
Yay.
Hey, Bonnie, I think you may be our last question for the night. So Bonnie Ida, our timer, has got her hand up and she's got a question. I'm not sure if I'm hearing you, Bonnie. Bonnie, you are muted.
There, got it unmuted. Okay, this one is the mention of carbon capture. Can you explain that a little bit? And is it connected with biofuels? Because I love the concept of capturing the methane from dump sites and turning it into fuel. That seems like a very good thing, but you were saying carbon capture itself is not. So a little explanation.
Wondering, Lisa looks like she might have it.
Okay.
Joyce, you got it? If not, I can.
All three of you can add in. But we're running short on time, so we've got enough time to give each of you 60
methods of
seconds.
carbon capture. Growing plants would be one of them. It turns out not to be a net gain for greenhouse gas emissions. Also has a problem with then it can cut into the food supply. Well, that's more corn used for ethanol, but carbon capture with growing plants has its, but growing plants is one, for make ethanol is one thing. Carbon capture by trees, you've heard of like plant a million billion trees. It's a great idea, good to preserve trees. However, if you were going to do enough of them to solve this problem by your own, you would need the size of 2 Chinas tree planting. So it would take a lot of trees. And the third one is direct air carbon capture, which can be very good, but be careful when companies say, we can let people use gasoline because we're offsetting it with carbon capture. Doesn't really work to reduce greenhouse gases.
Well, and I'll add on. So, and I will look for some articles that I've seen, and that this is my knowledge is somewhat limited. But I said dubious because my understanding is right now, carbon capture and sequestration, the last form that Joyce just mentioned, uses more energy and therefore uses more fossil fuels than it reduces
carbon capture. It goes under new technology, and the problem with new technology, it hasn't been perfected yet. It's not up to scale. It's very expensive. So yeah, carbon capture may be great 50 years down the road. It's not a solution for now.
Correct.
Yeah, Larry looks like he might know something about it too. And I'll also just say, I do think for us to get fully there, there's going to be like, I hear people talking about hydrogen, and I hear people talking about small nuclear reactors, which there are 2 off the coast of, I think they're in the Black Sea, off the coast of Russia. So there are all these different new technologies, and that's exactly what they are. They're new. And some of them are going to be successful and some aren't. They're all going to have risks. Even solar has risks. It's a, weighing the risk conversation that we have to have as we move into those technologies. We aren't there right now. Right now, we got a whole bunch of low-hanging fruit we haven't dealt with yet.
I think if we had the clean power legislation that Obama tried to pass and Biden passed some of it globally, if we had that kind of legislation to really minimize coal and oil, we get there quicker. But
Are you muted, Phil?
I am. There we go. I was just going to say, we are now at that special time of our event where we have to talk about our action items and then begin to wind down a little bit. We talked about clean action items, and the first one for us for an action item was sign the clean water petition. Addison Meyer was pushing that very strongly, and I think again we should remember why we're doing this, and it's not necessarily for ourselves, but it's for our children yet unborn. We have to fix the mistakes of the past, and we have to make up for it now. This is not something that's hypothetical or something for the future. This is real. It's happening right now. One of our speakers couldn't come to our event tonight because of the intensity of the precip that we've been experiencing and sea level rise that he's experiencing, flooding his house. Number 2, tell friends about the positive impact of the IRA and the BIL CHIPS Science Act. In other words, what we're talking about is legislation that can make a difference, that has been passed, is something that we should support. When you hear people that are challenging it or questioning it for political reasons, these are bills that will make a difference. October 25th, that's the date of the Brevard County legislative delegation. So it's a chance for all of us to go and speak. Not just the Space Coast Progressive Alliance and the League of Women Voters, but all of us as individuals can get a minute to stand up and say what's important to me. Another item that was an action item was to identify an energy group or sustainability group in your area and get involved. Do something, even if it's just a little bit, a couple hours a week, maybe an hour a week. Just do something to get involved. And I know the suggestion from Lisa was get to know your storm drain, get personal with your storm drain, go out there and take a look at it, figure out where the water flows through, what you can do to reduce grass clippings going into it and that sort of thing, because everything eventually goes into the ocean in our Indian River Lagoon. Another action item was build the base, make calls, write letters, take actions, and it's Joyce showed us how relatively easy it is to send a message to your local representatives, our state representatives, our federal representatives, and that was I think a really interesting thing that we did tonight. She gave us a really interesting a bit of homework here about the Agricultural Resilience Act and to help smaller farmers. And that is something all of us can do. That's House Resolution 1840 and Senate Bill 1016. These are federal legislation. I know Joyce is suggesting, hey, you could join the Citizens Climate Lobby. I think a couple people mentioned that. A good organization locally and in a larger scale. And as Lisa has said many times, stop fertilizing your lawn. This is something that I think many of us understand very clearly. I see somebody else that has another action item. Kim, what do you have?
Yeah. Sorry, you missed one of them, which is to use the Climate Action Now app, climateactionnow.com, to get Governor DeSantis to bring and Wilton Simpson to bring the IRA funding to Inflation Reduction Act dollars back to Florida.
Very
He
good one.
vetoed that.
Got it. So Climate Action Now. And if anybody is still using the chat, take a look through the chat. It's loaded with links that you can use. A lot of information there. Folks that are watching this on YouTube aren't going to have that opportunity, but those that are here in the Zoom, there's just an incredible amount of data here. So I would like to remind everybody about those action items. The program must not stop here. If you are a part of our group, you're watching this and you're inspired, do something. Tell your friends, tell your family. Don't keep it to yourself. If you do, we have failed. What's the point of us talking to each other in our own little bubble here, talking to each other? We need to spread the word, and that's how things change. So the program must not end here. Our next First Thursday event will be part 2 of Global Warming, Truth and Consequences. That's Thursday, November 2nd. Let me remind you of who's going to be here. We've got our special VIP guests from Montana, Delaney, Catherine Toms, MD. She's talking about green cars for kids. Dr. Robert Scheller, who is an associate dean for research up at North Carolina State University College of Natural Resources. Our own great local hero from Florida Tech, Dr. Steve Lazarus. He's a professor of ocean engineering and marine sciences. He's a climatologist who can answer your questions directly. What a fantastic night. I'm going to ask everybody, please come off mute. Let's give these fine panelists a round of applause. Our standing ovation, I'm sitting here, but we would all be standing if we were in our room together. We are so glad that you gave us your time tonight. We are just honored to have you as on our panel here at the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. We thank you so much. Can everybody come off mute and applaud? Come on, let's do this. Let's give everybody a round of applause. Let's do it. Come on, everybody. We thank you very much. Addison Meyer, she's already left us, but the young hero activist, Kim Ross, Executive Director, Rethink Energy Florida, Dr. Lisa Soto, Principal Scientist, Applied Ecology Incorporated, and Joyce Wasserman, who has done so much for us, Citizens Climate Lobby, and more. Thank you, and thank you again. We look forward to seeing all of you next month at the Space Coast Progressive Alliance First Thursday event. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.